You said Carson was the most dangerous player by a landslide after the Helen vote. After watching the episodes, do you stand by that read?
I do. I think he's so good at connecting with people and he's so good at downplaying his threat level. He's like, I didn't know. Haha. Like he has this adorable little giggle and like he and he's so sincere. Like when he came to me after that vote, like I think, to like say I'm sorry, I still want to work with you. Like he when I told him like your word holds less weight, like you can see like it really because he is such a sweet guy, like it does weigh on him. And like I think there's like that sincerity. Also, like this is just an incredible fact about Carson. He has like such a wide range of interests and like things that he knows about that he can really connect with everyone on like he connected with Carolyn on Roblox. He connected with me on like consulting, which I don't even like. He's an astronaut, but he talked to me a ton about my job. Like, and he's so good to be around that I think that like all of that is incredibly dangerous. So I love seeing him in his confessionals, like spilling all the things that he knows.
Got it. The show makes it seem like Jam Jam, Carson, and Carolyn were a trio, but why did Jam Jam say Carolyn would be the decoy vote instead of you? Um, yeah,
Yeah, so I think it happened because we were like, that's what Josh would believe. Like in coming in, I think he like viewed her as being like a misfit to the group. And clearly that wasn't what happened. Or like I was the one that should have been like clawing my way back in. And that's something that I think about. Like if I would have been like, I'm on the bottom, make me the decoy vote. But I think in that time, I like really didn't feel on the bottom. So I didn't feel like I needed to be like, take me, like make it me. So I think it really was that it was just most believable in that moment. And that I we didn't think it would like throw her off the way it did, which is so silly of us. No one ever on the planet wants to be the decoy vote.
absolutely. And we kind of see how people talk about Carolyn is always like, well, she's out of control, or she's always going to say what's on her mind. And I feel like that line of thinking kind of also played into that. Did your perspective of Carolyn ever change just by watching what she's actually doing in the episodes? Or even in the game, did your perception ever change from what you might have first thought of her to later?
Yeah. So this is in one of the secret scenes from this episode, but Carolyn tells us that like she shares her emotions because like that was like a big part of like her journey to like recovery and like sharing her emotions, not like bottling them. And I think in that takes like incredible bravery and like there's so much respect in how Carolyn lives her life because like who else on the planet like lives that freely and like that openly. So I think that's an incredible part of who Carolyn is. But also when you're out there, it's like not, I don't know if disarming is the right word, but to me, where I'm like probably the exact opposite end of the spectrum, it's like trying to understand like what, because she is very good at the game. Like she knows a ton about the game and like clearly she's kicking butt right now. So I think that it's like balancing that like in my head even to understand like what is very much in control and like what part is not out of control, but like this more like open communication style. Like for me, that was definitely something that like I was still stumped by, but like incredibly admirable of.
Yeah. So did Jam Jam tell you that he thought of himself as a bigger threat repeatedly too? Because it obviously seemed like a conversation between him and Carolyn. And what was his reason for thinking he was more of a threat?
So I was there for that conversation. I don't remember what the reasoning was. I think that maybe Josh came in thinking that. So it was like Jam Jam just like confirming what he thought. I don't know for sure, honestly. But Jam never said that to me specifically. Um, but it might have been that Josh thought Jam and I were really tight. So
Mhm.
then that might make Jam more of a threat. I don't know exactly, but it wasn't, I think it was just like it wasn't meant to be like insulting at all. From like Jams loves Carolyn, loves both. Like he would never like try to be rude.
Yeah.
It was just like I think based on what he perceived Josh to think.
Yes. Everyone is talking about the boot order being all women, and younger women. But one thing that I think that's interesting about Tika is that we're not hearing tribe strength as much. And that's probably because Bruce came out like very early. Um,
Yeah.
so Carson claimed he had a wild side, so that's why he went with Jim Jim and Carolyn over you and Helen. Which I do wonder how much of that decision came from him thinking he maybe could like manipulate more on the other side than you two, but that's just like a theory. But then Josh, he flat out said he saw you more as a threat than Jam Jam. So I don't know. In my perspective, you and Helen are very smart. Like I personally think it really is kind of coming down to that. But what's your perspective on the boot order specifically with Tika?
Yeah. So with Tika specifically, I think with the Helen vote, a lot of it was guided by Carson had told all of us that he thought Helen had an idol. So I think that was a huge piece of it. And people also thought me and Helen were close. And I think Helen and I communicate in a way that's like less similar to the way Jam and Carolyn communicate. So I think it was like this uniqueness of how they saw our relationship. And, you know, we're both more like game body in the way that like, you know, we're not like as, I don't know, just in the way that we are, it's more like straight faced. We're good, like kind of like da da da. Um, and then I think on my vote, it was probably um that when Josh came in, I like called him on the surgeon thing. I was like calling out some other stuff he was saying to us that we didn't think was truthful, but it wasn't like calling him out. I was just like, oh, I thought you were a surgeon. I also pulled him aside and I was like, there's no way they'd send you here without an idol. Like, you have to have a crazy advantage or an idol. Like, I was like, otherwise that's so unfair. And he's like, I know, like, but they didn't. So I think that I just was like too transparent in what I knew. Like, you can't show that you like there's you don't need to show that you're smart. You can just keep that inside. So I think that was potentially a downfall of mine.
That's fair. So Carolyn decided to put X marks the spot on the birdcage and then
Yes.
put it in the sand. Um, I was wondering because you guys, Tika seems so open about talking about like the search of the bird cage and the hints and stuff. So, were you guys coming from it like Ratu of thinking, well, this could possibly be for all of us? So why not just openly no? So,
No. No, we were all like very convinced that was an idol in there. And it was funny that we did the open search. I think we had this like mentality at the beginning where like we didn't like people going off on their own, which is like classic, you know. But I think that's where the group search came into play. And then the group emptying the bags. I think that happened more than once. Like we were just always like, because it was this like open, funny communication that we had, but like we were all sure it was an idol. And then when the X came up, because Carson thought Helen had an idol when she went home, he thought he'd seen her like slip it in her pants. So with that, then we were like, if Helen left with an idol, then maybe they'll be hiding an idol. And they've decided to put this crazy X on the birdcage. But lo and behold, it was Carolyn tricking us all. So yeah, we just thought like maybe if Helen left with the idol, this is their way to rehide it.
yeah. When did you find out the idol was fake?
I found out once everyone was back home. So it was like the biggest relief. Um, like obviously it makes me look a little silly for thinking it was real, but it's just such a relief to know like you didn't like have the exact tool to stay and you messed it up. I think it's also like as I do look silly, but it's also like if something looks like an idol, reads like an idol, like what can you do but think it's an idol? So it does like bring up a good question for future players, like how do you vet if something's actually real? And then maybe it does force more communication about idols to like vet out what other people think of it. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays now that there's so many fake idols in the game. And like idols that are made out of things that we don't have access to. Like there was this big glass bead on the idol that I got, which I was like, I know we don't have these big glass beads on the island. Therefore, this is something like that's come
Mhm.
from the game. But it'll be cool to see how it all plays out.
Do you think, I think there is a lot of conversations about what this whole fake idol twist given by production means for the
Mm-hmm.
future of the show. I mean, like, does it lessen the importance of idols now if it's always like, well, it might not even be real? So,
Totally. It like I think there's two things. There's like this new method of delivery of the idol, like in the cage, and how that might unfold moving forward. But also, like in us having like the three fake idols, like one per camp, then like what can be trusted then? And it's like if you're playing poker and you have a two of clubs and it looks like a two of clubs and it reads like a two of clubs, and then you play it and they're like, that's not a full house, right? That makes poker pretty confusing. Um, so it'll be very cool to see what future players do with that and like what production does with that moving forward. Because now they've developed this like baseline that idols can't be trusted. So how does that change how players play in the future? And it might make them rely less on idols, which good or bad, I don't know. But it might make them less likely. Like if in the future I think I have an idol, but I know it might not be real because of the precedent that's been set in 44, then you might be less likely to say, like, try to go like people into voting for you. You play an idol and then you have one vote to get someone out. That scenario doesn't work if you can't trust idols.
yeah. One of my questions for you, obviously every Survivor player is like team risk. Um, when it comes to the game, because it's like this is a one in a lifetime opportunity. I think this
Yeah.
cast is so excited to play Survivor. It just shows every time. You took several risks.
Yes.
And one of them is losing your vote, but you got the inheritance power. Now you
Mm-hmm.
lost your vote, and there is a question of like, oh, would have Helen stayed if you had a vote? You got the inheritance's power. You left the game without that. Do you look back of like actually maybe being more conservative, especially with all these twists out there? Is that going to be any more appealing to Survivor players after this season?
Yeah. So, well, one thing, when I got the inheritance advantage, like when I went on the journey, we had to draw the first time.
Oh,
So all three of us had a 2 in 3 chance of losing our vote. And the first draw was forced. The second draw was an option. But to your point, it is like, I feel like in past seasons, the mentality has always been like, go on the journey, like take the chance. And like all of Tika, I think everyone, every tribe did like a draw of the sticks or the rocks or whatever it was because everyone wants to go. And like in our situation, we went and we had a 2 in 3 chance of losing our vote on a very small tribe. So in that case, then it's like, are these journeys like, are you less incentivized to go on them? Are you, or like with the idol, are you less incentivized to like bank on an idol, rely on these twists to like give you something good? And I do think that's a cool or like a part that they've been introducing is this like risk and reward. And I think in the past, advantages have been far more reward than they have been risk.
yeah. Did you have a game plan for that inheritance advantage?
Well, as soon as I found what I thought was an idol, it becomes like the coolest thing ever, right? Because you basically have like a boomerang idol. Like you can use it with the inheritance advantage at a tribal and you'll come home with it. So I mean that's like the most exciting thing ever. So at that point then, you know, like if the idol was real, obviously not, but if that was true, then it's like I know I have at least two tribal councils in me if I play this correctly because you get the idol back and no one knows about it. So having those two together, what I thought was together, was like so exciting.
No, that's actually an amazing, yeah, that's an amazing plan. If everything
Yeah,
works
it
out.
could have been cool.
If you did do it though, thinking that was real, oh my gosh, that would have been as bad probably as going home with a real idol, you know?
Yes, exactly. I'm so obviously like based on what I thought to be fact, I didn't play well. But now that I know it's fake, I dodged a giant, like, the horrible moment of walking up and be like, I'm playing an idol. And then they're like, no, you're not. So, um, I obviously made the wrong call, but thankful now that it was fake that I didn't do it.